Next up on my Avengers rewatch is The Incredible Hulk, which, to my confusion, is a lot of people's least favorite film in the franchise. So, on my rewatch, I want to know specifically why they think like that. Is it because it's Edward Norton specifically and they don't like him as an actor? Does it have something to do with the CGI? Is it too much CGI? Actually, I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. I think it's specifically MCU. I think they think this is a bad MCU movie. And they're kind of right. Not totally, but mostly right on that hand. It does have some issues when it comes down to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I will get into that later, but is that the only thing that matters when it comes down to the movie? Not at all. It's still a really great movie, so let's get into it. First up is the people category, which goes over the acting, characters, casting, importance, and chemistry, all of which gets perfect points. The acting is incredible all the way around. Everybody's believable, and you really care about who they are, so their characters are memorable. I like everybody who was cast, even Edward Norton. Everybody had their own important role to add to the plot and to which everything is going on, so that gets perfect points. And chemistry, this is slightly a romance movie, so there's a lot of chemistry between Bruce Banner and, of course, Miss Ross. And their chemistry actually really works. If it was Mark Ruffalo in this role, it wouldn't. There's a lot of things that happen in this movie with that if Mark Ruffalo played the role, it wouldn't work out the same. It just wouldn't. It really did work very well for Edward Norton in this movie. Everything all together. This gets 10 out of 10 possible stars for people. Next up, we're looking at the writing category, which goes over the dialogue, the balance of the film, the depth of the story, originality, and how interesting it is. All of which gets perfect points except for dialogue and story depth. This isn't a very specifically great movie when it comes to dialogue. Nothing really stands out other than maybe Hulk smash. This stays at that half point. The story depth, it's not a super deep or meaningful story either, so that gets half points as well. Everything else is great. It's a very simplistic cat and mouse story about this guy trying to find the cure and all the obstacles he goes through to get to that point. So the balance is perfect. The originality, as far as Hulk movies goes, this was, I think, put together really well in general. It feels really fresh. It almost feels like a sequel to Hulk in 2003 if you really think about it. As far as originality goes, the way that they did everything, nobody's ever done really before, so I consider that super original. Interesting? Yeah, I was actually super surprised when I saw it in theater for the first time. I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't think that it could be on the same ballpark as Iron Man, which came out before it. And it did. It matched it in almost every way. Maybe not as good as Iron Man, but pretty similar as far as my entertainment went. So interesting, definitely gets full points. That's 8 out of 10 possible stars for writing. Next up, we look at the BTS category, which goes over the visuals, directing, editing, advertisement, and the music and sound. All of these get perfect points. Visuals are very intense and really great. It is 10 years old at this point, so there are things here and there that don't work as well as they did in 2008. Specifically speaking, with the helicopter that flies around is clearly CGI. Some of the shots of the Hulk don't look as realistic as they did back then, but overall, when you're really watching the attention to detail with what's going on with the Hulk, you can't really complain that much because they did stuff with the transformation of the Hulk in this movie that's only in this movie. You don't see stuff like that in the Avengers. I'm talking about things like you're seeing bones specifically expand. You're seeing muscles pop out. You're seeing veins stretch where they weren't there before. Think of what a body would actually go through physically, almost painfully to a degree, when it's turning into something much bigger than you were previously. That's what the Incredible Hulk does. In the Avengers, he basically just morphs. He just morphs into the Hulk, and there's not much going on there. I have to give this full points. When you first start watching the movie, a few things is gonna hit you. Great soundtrack, great editing, and great directing. Great use of the camera. All those hit you pretty much right off the bat before anything actually happens. You're like, they're really focusing on these specific parts just here in the beginning, but as you're watching, throughout as well. So all those get perfect points. And as far as advertisement, it was as advertised as the Hulk movie, so that gets perfect points. 10 out of 10 possible stars for BTS. Next up is the narrative arc category. That goes over the introduction, the inciting incident, the obstacles, the climax, and the falling action, all of which gets perfect points except for the falling action. I would say it definitely calms down, but it doesn't really feel like it comes to a new sense of norm unless you count the last second of the movie, which is arguably kind of a new norm, but it doesn't explain anything. So for the most part, I'm going to give this half points. Everything else is great. The introduction gets you acquainted with what's going on with Bruce Banner now, because it's not an origin story, but you get acquainted with what's going on with Bruce Banner. You get acquainted with what's going on with Betsy Ross, and her dad, the general, and everything that's going on. The inciting incident is when they ultimately find Bruce Banner out in the Columbia or wherever the heck he is, and then he really starts going on the run from that point forward. The obstacles, obviously it's cat and mouse. There's a lot of obstacles to overcome, and that's basically heading off against General Ross a few different times. The climax is a big thing at the end, and it is bigger than the rest of the movie. So full points to that. 9 out of 10 possible stars for narrative arc. Next up is the entertainment category, and this goes over how rewatchable the movie is, how much of a fun experience you have while watching it, if you have an impulse to buy it, impulse to talk about it, and if it sucks the audience in. All of this gets perfect points. Is it a rewatchable movie? Yeah, in fact, this is one of my favorites in the entire series, just as a movie on its own. This gets perfect points. Fun experience? Like I said, I always enjoy it. I have a fun experience while watching. Fun experience, yes. Impulse to buy it? Absolutely. I would not mind owning this and buying it. It's better than people put it out to be. Impulse to talk about it? I still talk about it. Because people want to pick fights and say it's this terrible movie, and it's not. And I don't know, I get into arguments on Facebook and things like that. So, definitely, full points there. And does it suck the audience in? It does. There's a lot to the movie, and it never stops. It's action-oriented, but it's also character-oriented. There's a lot to it to actually love. So, full points there, 10 out of 10 possible stars for entertainment. Now we get into the nitty-gritty of the specialty categories. These are the things that I want to know before seeing the movie this time. And first off is, how does it fit well with the MCU? This is what I was mentioning in the beginning. Not very well. It does try. I'm going to say it tries to fit in because it has mentions of Stark Industries. Tony's in it for a second. General Ross is in the later movies of the MCU, all the way up to Infinity War. There's mention of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Director Fury. Actually, they use the S.H.I.E.L.D. database at some point to help find the Hulk, even though I'm not entirely sure why the U.S. government has access to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s database or whatever. I don't know. But they have these things in it to try to feel more like the MCU. There's even some jokes thrown in here and there, but far and few between. It's not a light movie. So like I said, for the most part, this doesn't fit very well with the MCU, because the rest of the movies in the series are light. They make jokes. You can consider everybody in the movie your best friend regardless. Not so much here. You're just here to watch the movie. You're just here to watch the characters do what they do. So it doesn't really feel like the MCU. It just doesn't. The MCU, I'm going to give it half points. 5 out of 10 possible stars. As a Hulk movie, how does it fare? Awesome. I have no qualms here. They did a very good job with just being the Hulk. So that gets 10 out of 10 possible stars. As an Edward Norton movie, I've seen him in a ton of movies, a lot of movies that I love. He may be tough to work with, but he knows how to make a movie. And he knows how to make the Hulk. And when I think of Edward Norton, I probably think of the Hulk when having a discussion with somebody about him. So 10 out of 10 possible stars for Edward Norton. As an action film, definitely. A lot of great action going on in this movie. It is the Hulk. I mean, him tearing up a car just to use the left and right side of that car as boxing gloves during the main fight. It's awesome. Come on, let's just deal with it. So that gets 10 out of 10 possible stars. And if halfway decent, yeah, it's halfway decent. So that gets 10 out of 10 possible stars as well. If we add up all the stars together, we get 92 out of 100 possible stars, 92%, which is the exact same score that I had for it before I started this whole scoring method. So it just happened to be the same. So, hey, guys, tell me what you think of The Incredible Hulk in the comments down below. And for YouTube, you know you can subscribe to me, hit that like button, hit that bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. So until then, guys, peace out.